So today I'm going to give you a tour of my desk setup and give you a few tips for setting yourself up as well. And I use this space primarily for work and Microsoft Teams meetings, and it's where I film these YouTube videos also. So let's go. Now the first thing that you're going to notice is that this space is pretty compact and has a lot of screens packed into it. And I'll put links into most things in my setup in the description below. Now I typically use 3 screens for work, and 2 little screens that you're seeing in the upper right are just duplicates of my primary monitor. Now these are a 5-inch and a 7-inch HDMI field monitor that is basically driven with a 3-way HDMI splitter, and I'll dive deeper into how I use those in a moment for things like teleprompter and also Teams calls. And because I record a lot of Windows demos, I use native 1920 by 1080 screens at 125% Windows zoom. Now the laptop on the bottom right is a Surface Laptop Studio. It drives my working setup. In the right side and back, I have a dedicated OBS PC that's running on a Surface Book 2, and you can find an entire video on my reasons for why I built it and how I set it up at the link on the screen. Then the lower left is another Surface Book 2 that I'm actually in the process of migrating from to the Surface Laptop Studio. Now my keyboard is a newer one. I've got a Microsoft Designer compact keyboard. The nice thing with it is it supports 3 different Bluetooth connections that I can toggle between my different PCs, and I've also got a matching mouse with the keyboard. So now I'm going to dive into the video capture aspect. So the first thing that you're going to see, we'll start with lighting, is the massive key light that's actually just a 12-inch run-of-the-mill USB ring light with a 3-color temperature setting and 10 different brightness settings, kind of the stuff that you can find on Amazon for about $30 to $50. It's mounted, in my case, directly to my wall, and I'm just using 3M command strips, and it has a collapsible, newer 23-inch softbox light diffuser slipped over it. What that does is it gives a nice even light source that's a little bit off center so that you don't have that ring light kind of rings in my eyeballs effect that you see on especially YouTube videos from about 2015. On the right side of my desk I have another LED light that's called a hair light, which helps separate the outline of my head from the background. Finally, firing against the wall on my desk is a Philips Hue bloom light, which is fully color adjustable. Now on to audio capture. So I'm using a Shure MV7 USB microphone that I've modified a bit. I've painted it satin black, and I'm using an OEM Shure SM7B pop filter. Now those tend to run about $15 for the real ones, and I recommend this mod. Now the pop filter corrects the main downside to the MV7, which are the plosives. And those are the things that you hear when you're speaking with P's and T's. So it's effectively adding about an inch or so between the capsule itself and the tip of the pop filter, which kind of diffuses the air a bit. And the foam is a little bit denser also than the MV7's native pop filter. So I don't filter or equalize the microphone at all. This is actually the raw audio that you're hearing from it. And as you can see, it's about 12 inches from my mouth. Now let's continue on with the audio. So the speakers, I love them. They're the Audio Engine A2 Plus speakers, and they're paired with a Kanto Sub 6. Now everything is in gloss white. Wanted to make sure everything matched. And when I use headphones for mainly editing, video editing, they are the AKG K240 models, and they're connected to the back of the Shure microphone. And I have a rotating headphone stand that's fixed to the corner of my desk. So they're always handy, and they're kind of out of the way as well. Now the desk itself is just an IKEA Alex 52-inch desk, and I like it because of the built-in cable management that you have in the back. So now why don't we move on to the cameras and the lenses, maybe why you're here. So I've done a ton of reviews on cameras for this channel, which is probably how you found this video to begin with. Kind of like your phone might have 3 different cameras on it, I've got a similar setup with 3 cameras here. And each has a different frame. For medium shots, what you're seeing right now is a Sony a7 Mark II full frame camera with a Samyang 35mm full frame autofocus lens. It's also got a Parrot teleprompter attached to it with a 7-inch Feel World field monitor, which is capable of flipping the image from HDMI to a mirror image so that it reads correctly on the teleprompter And also when I'm on my Teams calls, people look correct in the teleprompter as well, so I can make eye contact with people in remote meetings. Now the second camera is a Sony ZV-E10 crop sensor camera that you can find in my review at the link on the screen, and it's paired with a Sigma 30mm crop frame autofocus lens. Now if I switch between the two cameras, the A7 and the ZV-E10, you'll see that even though my Sony A7 next to it has a similar sounding 35mm lens versus the 30mm Sigma, the shot is much wider because it's a full frame camera and lens. Now this is called crop factor, and it's an expensive lesson to learn if you don't do the research. So if you're using a crop sensor camera for a setup like this, you're usually going to want a 16 to 30mm lens. In my case, it's about 3 or 4 feet away from me, so it's probably the lens setting that you'll want. Now a 16mm lens will be a really wide shot, and 30mm being tight like the shot that you're seeing right now. And one more thing, underneath the Sony ZV-E10, I've also got a 5-inch field monitor. It's an eYoYo monitor, a very inexpensive one that I got from Amazon. And it also is great for teleprompter use, being directly underneath the lens, and also for Microsoft Teams. And if you're paying attention, you'll see that I have one more little camera, the Mikoze 4K USB camera. Now it's got a super wide lens and claims to be 90 degrees of width, but I think it's even wider. I guess it's around 95 or 100 based on some of the other cameras that I've tested. Now because it's firing down a bit, you can see that the horizon lines aren't perfectly vertical, but it is actually a distortion-free lens. And since my last review with the link on the screen, you'll notice that I've made it a little tiny bit better with just a little bit of background blur to match the other cameras that I have with these smaller, 1.4 and 1.8 focal lengths. Now for that, and to get that blur, I'm not using a lens on the camera, I'm actually using NVIDIA Broadcast. Since my Surface Laptop Studio has an RTX graphics card that supports that and works with NVIDIA Broadcast, I can just set it to the minimum amount of blur. Don't overdo it because it'll look fake. With that camera, and you can see that now it's matching my Sony's as well. Now my main laptop is docked to a Surface Dock 2, so I can have all the connections and ports I need. And the last thing you'll probably see here is the Elgato Stream Deck, which is attached to my dedicated OBS PC in the far right. And when I record videos like this, I use OBS to capture all my video and audio footage. So I hope this helps you customize your desk or at-home studio setup for your own videos. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel and you found this useful, please hit subscribe or like the video to help me out with the YouTube algorithm. And thank you so much for joining me today.